Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Danny Carroll, who's here to share with us his new book, Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis. Discover a palliative care alternative medicine that you can survive. Please note, this book is not for everyone. If you believe that the foundation principles of conventional medicine are beyond question, and if you have conviction that chemotherapy, surgery, and radiation are the only possible treatments for cancer, then this book is not for you. So Danny Carroll spent the first half of his life in London, UK, and completed his education with a master's degree from the London School of Economics. He later moved to India, where he now lives and works, and has spent the last 17 years studying alternative health therapies in search of the golden grail of health and wellness. Following a cathartic healing experience in 2012, he has focused on mind-body healing protocols for the last 10 years. Danny discovered a new body of medical knowledge called Dramatic Healing Knowledge, or Dramatic New Medicine, developed in Germany by Dr. Hammer. Danny has spent the last 7 years using this practice to help people with chronic and terminal health conditions. So let's welcome to the show, Danny Carroll.
Thank you, Marianne. It's very kind. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here to talk about this book. And my goodness, I have to tell you, I was reading it. For me, it was a game changer without a doubt. This is just such a powerful read. What inspired you to write this?
I've lost almost my entire family to the disease they call cancer. I struggle to remember any of my family that hadn't died of cancer or in an oncology ward. So that was probably the foundation. I had a colleague who was a very close friend in the mid 2000s who was diagnosed with cancer, and she couldn't afford the cancer treatment. I live in India, and if you can't afford treatment in India, then and you don't have insurance, then basically you're just sent home to die. So I ran a marathon to fund her treatment and raised a lot of money for her cancer treatment, and she was delighted, of course, right? I mean, then she could afford the cancer treatment. So she went in, she started chemotherapy. And she used to message me from hospital saying, Danny, I don't know what these doctors are doing, but it feels like they're putting poison in my veins. And basically she had 3 rounds of chemotherapy and she died. And I was devastated. I mean, I didn't know any better at the time, right? But I felt terrible. I mean, number one, I funded her treatment, and number two, when she messaged me from the hospital, I used to encourage her strongly to continue the treatments, thinking I was doing the right thing. And I mean, when she went in the hospital, Marianne, I mean, although they said she had cancer, I mean, she looked fine to me. And then within a very short period of time, she died. And when that happened, I swore to myself, I was, in my early 30s. I'm a lawyer by education and a management and finance specialist by profession. So I had no background in any form of either mainstream or alternative medicine. And I swore to myself in my early 30s that I would search to the ends of the earth in order to find a better solution to the problem we call cancer. And I've now, I think, spent about 18 years studying cancer in all of its forms. And that's basically the inception point of where I started this book.
Well, I think that was so kind of you to move forward with that, not only in doing that fundraiser for your friend, but also bringing the information you found forward, because I think it's going to help so many people, especially those who have been told that they have a terminal diagnosis. It seems like a lot of times people are just given like no hope.
No, that's right. I mean, the current system basically teaches you to die with some level of dignity. What I'm attempting to do here is to get out the message that if you choose it not to be, then it does not have to be the end, right? I mean, it's only if you buy into the diagnosis, and then it becomes effectively a self-fulfilling prophecy. But no, you certainly do not have to die. And of course, these all of the principles that I've articulated in my book, whilst I've targeted it specifically at terminally ill cancer patients, because in my experience, they're the people who are most willing and able to be able to listen to an alternative opinion on cancer. These principles apply equally to cancer at any stage.
So in your book, you share about how, especially in America, when someone has cancer, I was just shocked to hear about that's they look at it in many ways. The medical system does, not all, but there's this balance where their care is going to be worth $1 million to the medical system, and I was shocked by that.
Yeah, no, I mean I mean, let's look at some big statistics, Marianne. I mean, I think America has 4% of the global population, but consumes more than 40% of the global pharmaceutical drugs, right? So, I mean, America, from a drug consumption perspective, is miles ahead of the rest of the world. So yeah, I mean, $1 million per cancer patient. I think that was a study done a few years ago. I suspect that's probably now increased. But yeah, it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, right? So that, I mean, this is part of the problem. These medical medical findings that I've covered in my book were established in like the late 1970s and early 1980s. But they've successfully been sort of kept under the rug for a large part because if people learn this medical science and they learn to heal themselves, large chunks of the medical system as it is today would actually not be required, and that's part of the problem.
I was real impressed with in your book how you made this mind body illness connection, and I'd love for you to share that with our listeners.
Yeah, so let's go. The easiest way to explain this is to go back to its origins in terms of its discovery. My teacher was a German medical doctor who specialized he was an internist, and his specialization was cancer research. In 1978, his son was shot and murdered. And 2 months after his son died, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer and with stomach cancer. Now, according to modern medicine, cancer sort of drops down out of the sky, and it has no specific cause or correlation to any events in life. And my teacher, being a traditional medical doctor, he also didn't know if there was any causal link between his son dying and him getting a cancer on a reproductive organ 2 months after his death. But he thought that there could be some causal link, right? I mean, otherwise he was in his late 40s. He'd been a relatively healthy guy all of his life, and all of a sudden his 19-year-old son dies. And he gets a cancer 2 months later on a reproductive organ. Now, when he went through the initial diagnosis, he was given a 1% chance to survive, and he miraculously survived it. He had surgery, had his testicle removed and part of his stomach taken out by surgery, but he refused chemotherapy and radiation, which I understand the vast majority of doctors also refuse. So at the time, he was the head of cancer research for a gynecological oncology unit that was associated to Munich University. And he had 200 female confirmed cancer patients. Many of them were diagnosed as terminal. And he went through a process to interview those 200 women to see whether they'd gone through a similar emotional trauma to him before they got cancer. And out of 200, 200 all had. And when he started putting them into separate categories, so women with ovarian cancer or cervical cancer or intraductal breast cancer or mammary breast cancer, what he observed is that the women in the same category had all suffered from the same type of trauma. So, for example, the women who were suffering from ovarian cancer had all gone through some form of profound loss, in the same way that he'd suffered a profound loss when he got testicular cancer from his son dying. So that was the starting point of his research. Over the course of time, he worked directly, I think, with over 50,000 cancer patients to map out this entire system. But broadly, what he concluded from his research was that cancer is not this random disease that sort of falls out of the sky, but it's actually part of our survival biological program. So if you look at his situation, his son was shot and murdered. So he lost a child. So what nature has done, so he got a testicular teratoma, which is a relatively rare form of testicular cancer. And what he basically concluded over the course of his research is that the way this survival program for cancer basically works is when you have an unexpected emotional trauma, or what he called a biological conflict shock. What happens is, so in his case, he lost a child. He got a tumor on his testicle. What he discovered is that tumor had a biological purpose and a function, and it was actually functional tissue. And what that tissue did was to increase his testosterone and sperm production capacity, so that he had a greater chance of getting his wife pregnant, so that he could replace the child he just lost. And with women with ovarian cancer, when nature decides whether you're going to be a boy or a girl, the testicle and the ovary form similar function. And the ovary is also affected by a profound loss. And the growth in the ovary, what it basically does is it increases estrogen production in the woman, which does a number of things. Number one, it will keep her looking 15 or 20 years younger than her age for the rest of her life. But the biological purpose of that basically is to make her look younger, to increase her estrogen so that she becomes more fertile, so that she can replace the partner or the child that she just lost, in the same way that applies in testicular teratoma cancer in men. So once you understand how these patterns work, then what this doctor did basically over the course of his life, over a 39-year period, was to essentially to unravel the biological code, and to work out that many of the things that we believe today are diseases are actually survival biological programs that are actually designed to help us to survive and are not there to kill us. Now, when medical doctors, when they would examine, for example, Dr. Hummer's testicle, they would rightly conclude that the cells are fast growing, abnormally fast growing. But the key parts of the puzzle that are missing, which leads them to draw that conclusion, is the fact that they do not understand the purpose of that program or the cause of the program. So when you don't understand the big picture as to what the cancer program is designed to do from a survival perspective, and you don't understand what's happening in the person's life in order to be able to trigger that type of biological response, then they basically conclude it's fast growing and abnormal, which is a correct conclusion. However, if you don't understand the purpose of it and the challenges that somebody is facing in their life at this point in time, I mean, this is the equivalent, Marianne, of, you know, if you see a danger in front of you on the road when you're driving your car, I mean, you'll either put your foot on the brake or you'll put your foot on the accelerator in order to avoid that dangerous situation. Well, cancer is essentially the same thing. It's there to help you to either increase or decrease your capacity in order to help you to overcome and survive a crisis that you are currently facing in your life. And that's why the cells are abnormally fast growing, because it's there to help you survive.
It's all a very big shift in perspective and really looking at what the root causes are as opposed to all these symptoms.
Well, it is. So, as I said at the beginning, Marianne, I mean, I'm a businessman, right? I have no background in medicine, whether it's alternative or conventional. So, I mean, I take a simple approach to problem solving in life, and that is that unless you solve a problem at the root cause, if you address the symptoms of a problem, and we learn this in management consulting and venture capital and all of the other industries that I've spent my life working in, unless and until you solve a problem at the root cause, then the problem will just keep coming back. So on my journey of looking for this holy grail, the better solution to cancer, the cure for cancer, which I set myself as an objective when I think I was about 32 or 33, I studied many modalities. I studied nutritional healing, I studied emotional healing, I studied spiritual and energy healing. I looked at, I mean, I live in India, so we have many modalities of healing here. We have homeopathy and Ayurveda, and I studied all of these. And the first thing that I would do when I was looking at the modality was to find out whether the modality could correctly identify the cause of the problem or whether they were in fact addressing the symptoms. So in nutritional healing, you're detoxing the body. So I studied nutritional healing for maybe 10 years. I studied the Bach flower remedies, which is an English emotional healing system. So in Bach flower remedies, you're treating the symptoms of the emotions. You're not trying to get to the specific cause of the problem. If you look at even healing systems like homeopathy, in homeopathy, you're treating the symptoms of the environment. But all of these are systems of symptomatic treatment. So this is not a problem that exists exclusively with conventional medicine. This is alternative medicine modalities as well. All of the modalities, both conventional and alternative, are all treating symptoms of some description. So my search for finding the solution for cancer was based purely on the fundamental principle that I look at things in terms of input, process, and output. Okay, so you have to, unless and until you address the input of the problem, i.e., the cause of the problem, you won't solve it. Now, in biological terms, the input basically is the life event, the emotional trauma, the crisis that you're facing. You know, your partner just left you, or you just got fired from your job, or your child ran away, or there's some crisis that happens to you in life. So this is the input that basically triggers the chain of events. the processing happens in the brain, and the symptoms basically come out in the organ. Okay, so the problem with all of our systems of treatment, both alternative and conventional, is that we are trying to solve the problem at the organ level. Now, the organ is the symptom. You can never solve the problem at the organ level. Basically, until you address the cause of the problem, which is the crisis that you're facing in your life, and you can connect the chain of events from the emotional trauma or life crisis and challenge that you've just faced in your life, that's triggered the chain of events from your psyche or your perception through to your brain and down to your organ. I mean, we're a holistic system, Marianne. I mean, if you're a car mechanic, you have to learn all elements of how to fix a car if it breaks down, right? If you just learn to fix a carburetor or change a wheel, you can never solve a problem. As a mechanic, you have to learn the entire mechanical system. Now, what this medical doctor has done basically is he has drawn those connections between life's crises, how they impact the brain, and how they trigger biological programs to increase or decrease the capacity of certain organs. But to solve that problem, you have to solve the life crisis. The organ is just a symptom of the problem. You can never solve a problem by addressing the symptom, which is why we now have so many chronic health conditions, because we're not addressing the cause of the problem.
It's one Band-Aid after another, not really getting to the root issue.
Absolutely.
I was so impressed within your book. You shared about how this doctor was able to determine someone's entire medical history from a CT scan. I thought that was just remarkable.
Amazing. So yeah, so I've also learned to read brain CT scans, but not to the level of capability of my teacher. But yeah, I mean, he was in Austria, I think, in 1997, and he was explaining his medical discoveries to a group of doctors, and one doctor came up to him and gave him a brain CT scan and asked him if he could make a diagnosis of the patient just by using a brain CT scan. And he diagnosed, he successfully, the patient had 5 problems in total, two I think that were resolved and 3 that were current. And he diagnosed all of the problems, including what was in the past and what was today, just from the brain CT scan. I mean, our entire life history, Marianne, is printed on our brains. If doctors learned to read brain CT scans in the same way that my teacher did, then pretty much it would be that plus a blood test is pretty much the only diagnostic you need in order to tell somebody's entire life history. And you find this quite surprising, but in India, you can get a brain CT scan for between $30 to $40, and you can walk into many diagnostic laboratories without a prescription, and you can walk out in an hour with your brain CT scan in hand. Quite extraordinary. Now, if you're in America or you're in the UK, it will take you 6 months and 10 doctors' prescriptions and, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000 or something to be able to get a brain CT done. I mean, you can fly to India and have it done in an hour and fly back home and get it done in no time. So it's really quite amazing. That's why India is such a place for medical tourism, right? People come to India to get medical tourism done because it's so much cheaper and so much quicker to get things done here.
That is quite a big difference, and it seems like the whole the way that the medical community operates really needs to be revamped in many ways, like many of the other systems we have.
I mean, Marianne, I was in the UK last year visiting my parents, and and I needed to get a blood test done. And of course, in India, I'm just used to, I get somebody come home and take a blood test, and I have the results by the evening, right? And it cost me like $10. I was trying to get a blood test done in the UK. It was going to cost me about £200, and the results would have come in 4 days, and I was leaving in 2. So, I forget how spoiled I am by being in India and having access to such amazing medical treatments at such a reasonable cost. But it just doesn't. I know I'm not so familiar with the US, but I know it's considerably more difficult to get any medical test done in anywhere in the world, I think, than it is in India. That's for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. So,
Yeah.
without a doubt. Well, and I understand that you have a term called bioswitching, and I'd love for you to share what that is. I was so impressed by that.
The bioswitch theory. This was my creation, actually. So what we call disease today, so what we call cancer as a disease, Dr. Hummer called it a special biological special program. These programs have what we call an on switch, an off switch, and have a biological purpose. So what I did to try and make that a little more understandable is I've termed it the bioswitch theory. Now, basically, the on switch. So let's go back to my teacher's situation again. The on switch for his testicular teratoma basically was the unexpected emotional trauma of his son dying. Okay, so he's hit a crisis. The on switch basically switched on that biological program to increase the size of his testicles so that he had a greater capacity to produce testosterone and sperm, so he could replace the child he just lost. Now, the off switch. Now, there are actually 2 off switches. The best off switch always is a practical resolution of the conflict in life. Now, what does that mean? And in Dr. Hummer's case, in my teacher's case, basically, if he had got his wife pregnant, then the purpose of that biological program would have been achieved. The purpose of the testicular teratoma is to increase the sperm and testosterone production. He's got his wife pregnant, so the purpose of that biological program had been achieved. So what would have happened is that the biological program would have switched off. The extra capacity that was added to his testicle would have been removed naturally, and his testicle would have reverted to its original size. Now, obviously, at the point where he got cancer, he didn't understand, he didn't know this, right? Because he was a traditionally trained medical doctor. So he did not have this knowledge at this point in time. So he had his testicle removed. Also, his wife was past her childbearing years, so he couldn't have got his wife pregnant even if he had have known at that point in time. So there's a second switch that this doctor discovered that can also switch these biological programs, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, all biological programs can be switched off. And that is basically when you connect the cause, the root cause, the emotional trauma, the life event that triggered this problem to the symptoms it created, i.e. in Dr. Hummer's case, the tumor in his testicle. So if he had have said to himself, okay, I know I have a tumor growing in my testicle because I just lost my son, and my testicle is increasing in size in order to increase my capacity to be able to replace my child. He could have used his conscious mind to overall, all of these biological programs run in your subconscious mind. You don't sit there when your child gets shot and say, oh, okay, I think I'm going to increase the size of my testicle so that I become more fertile so I can replace my child. You don't think that. These programs run in your subconscious mind. They're part of our survival biological wiring. But your conscious mind overrules your subconscious mind. Okay, so you can use your conscious mind to switch these biological programs off when you understand how to do it. Now, the final part of the bioswitch theory is the biological purpose. And this is the key part that's missing in all both alternative and conventional medicine modalities in today's system. And that's basically that these, let me put it another way, Marianne. In your lifetime, nature is never going to make a single mistake. Nature knows what it's doing. It's an extraordinary design when you understand how it works. The problem is we don't understand it. So we think it's going wrong when in fact it's going right. Okay, so in my teacher's case, the biological purpose of the tumor he got on his testicle was to increase his fertility level so he could replace a child he just lost. So when you understand the biological purpose of a program, then it all starts to make sense. And that's the magic in these medical discoveries. They really are truly extraordinary.
I understand you went through your own experiences where you're able to switch off things like, which is, I think a lot of people suffer from, is like disc pain in their lower back, or, sinus infections, or IBS, or lactose intolerance. So how were you able to look at this in a way that you were able to decipher what it was that your body was experiencing?
So in this body of knowledge, basically every part of the body, this doctor has laid out what causes a problem, what happens when you experience the conflict or the trauma, how your capacity is increased or decreased in order to help you solve the problem. And then after you solve the problem, the process the body has to go through in order to revert your capacity back to your normal level. So he's mapped this out for everything. And I'm talking everything, including depression and suicide and IBS and rheumatoid arthritis and cancer and Parkinson's disease, everything. So when you have a problem, if you refer to what is now called the scientific chart of Germanic New Medicine, it's mapped out all of the causes of problems for every part in your body. So my first real experience of this after a couple of years of studying this was basically, this was in 2015. I was in the UK. I was on my way to take my practitioner's course in this medical science. I'd split up from my ex-wife in 2011, and I had a new partner. And this was the first time that my new partner had visited my parents and my family in the UK. When I landed in the UK, within about 6 hours of landing, I experienced the most crippling stomach cramps and intestinal gas and loose motions I've ever experienced in my life. I was basically on the toilet every hour for about 72 hours. And my then girlfriend and now wife basically said, "Come on, let's see if we can try using this new medical science you're learning in order to solve this problem." So I said to her, we can try. I mean, I haven't even done my practitioner's course yet, so I have a lot of theoretical knowledge, but I'm not really sure I know how to use it. So we were laying on the bed in my parents' house, and my wife asked me two questions. She said to me, Danny, what is the problem in life or conflict that causes pain in the stomach? And the second question she asked was, when does the pain start? So the answer to the first question was that for the most part, the 80% of the stomach gets affected by what's called an indigestible anger, or a problem that you cannot solve. And the pain, the cramps and the intestinal gas, etc., start basically when you resolved the problem. So she then said to me, well, what problem have we resolved by coming to England, to your parents' house? And I said, I don't know. I mean, my parents had organized my family to come over, and we had a big party in the garden, and everybody had fun and frolics and drinks, etc. And we had a great day. There was no family conflab or problem-solving session that could really be pointed to. And then we were laying there for 2 hours on the bed, and I was sort of folded over in half with these stomach cramps. And I said to my then girlfriend, I said, I think I know what problem we've solved. And she said, okay, what is it? Now, a bit of background, my ex-wife and my family didn't get on well. She didn't like my family, and my family didn't like her. And it was honestly like a rock and a hard place trying to manage that relationship. And so I'm laying on the bed, and I said, I think the problem that we've solved is that my partner fights with my family, because my family loved my new partner, right? And I'm laying on the bed, and 1 second before I said it, I was literally folded in half with stomach cramps. Crippling stomach cramps, and I'd had them for 72 hours before that. And as soon as I said, I've solved a problem that my partner fights with my family, my stomach went diggly, and I'm laying there, and I said to my girlfriend, I said, the pain's gone. And she said to me, what are you talking about? I said, I don't know. The pain's gone. She said, come on, don't be stupid. I mean, like 2 seconds ago, I was folded over in half with stomach cramps. And I said, I don't know, the pain's gone. My stomach just went diggly, and now I feel perfectly fine. She said to me, come on, don't be stupid. So she said, come on, we'll wait for an hour and see if it comes back. And we waited for an hour, and it didn't come back. And then we waited for 2 hours and didn't come back. And it hasn't come back since, right? So as soon as I consciously connected the cause of the problem with the symptoms, the stomach cramps, the pain, etc., then it just switched it off like a light switch. It was the most incredible experience I've ever gone through. And I've since learned to do that with all problems. I mean, the stories I have, you'd be perfectly justified to think that I'm utterly insane, but I'm not.
You're a skeptic, right?
I'm a huge skeptic. I mean, I don't believe, and people come to me for help, right? Particularly when doctors send them home to die and tell them nothing more can be done. People come to me for help. And my first advice to everybody is you should be hugely skeptical. Do not believe anything that anybody tells you, including me, and especially me, until you have experienced this for yourself, until you've successfully switched off biological programs. And for me, switching off one biological program, I mean, that could be luck, right? I mean, for me, I need to switch off 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. And each time I switch off a biological program, my conviction increases over time. And that's how I advise everybody should be with every, not only medical modality in life, but that is my foundation, my cornerstone, my keystone of principle that I use for everything I do in life. So I have to test things for myself. And so whether I say to people, I mean, if you want to study these medical discoveries, I mean, I number one, strongly encourage it, but just remain skeptical. Yeah, you should not have conviction in these medical discoveries until you go through that process of actually proving to yourself that they work. And when they do, I mean, you'd be blown away. Yeah.
Well, and I was so impressed in your book. You talked about that there was a 6-year cancer research study that talked about how 85% had a survival rate. And I was so surprised by that.
Yeah, that's an inspiring and a sad story, right? I mean, because of the power of these medical discoveries. I mean, my teacher was vilified throughout his life, thrown in prison. He spent 2.5 years in prison, prosecuted numerous times. And in one of those prosecutions, a psychologist who specialized in oncology, i.e. in treating cancer patients, had been working in a cancer hospital in Paris. And he treated over 1,000 patients over time, but he carried out a 6-year cancer research study. Okay, let me get the numbers. So I think there were 604 patients in the research study in total. Out of those 604 patients, 215 individuals, which was 26%, refused all medical treatment, and 312, which was 33%, appeared for consultations only once, and 380 had medical treatment and basically also had his consultations. So after 6 years from those patients, from the 215 people who refused medical treatments, 183 of them survived, which was an 85% survival rate. From the cancer patients who had medical treatment, 102 survived, which was a 28% survival rate. Now, this doctor was fired from the hospital he worked in when they discovered that he was using my teacher's medical discoveries in order to deliver these extraordinary survival rates. And he experienced a problem of, once he was fired from the hospital, he experienced a problem that made his groin swell up. And he went to the hospital, and according to Dr. Hummer's testimony, he was given morphine end-of-life care for reasons unknown to Dr. Hummer or to anybody. And after 10 days, this researcher basically was dead. So it seems that cancer research is quite a dangerous occupation.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreaking to hear that.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah, at least in this, well, it seems like when we have people that are ahead of their time in some ways, they're always met with some really great response that comes from one organization or another. So to have this information for people, I think is so, empowering.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back in history, Marianne, I mean, when in any situation where there are significant discoveries or changes coming into society, I mean, there's always a huge resistance and pushback from the existing system. It's perfectly normal, yeah. It's human nature. My personal and there's no difference with these medical discoveries, right? I mean, they were censored and kept under the rug, etc. But I mean, we're heading towards 50 years since they've been discovered. So we're well beyond that period. And if you come to places like India, I mean, they're actually. I mean, I spent last weekend teaching 100 doctors about how to use these medical discoveries to heal people with cancer naturally. So, I mean, in India, the medical care system is very different, Marianne. I mean, you have all modalities. You've got emotional healing, spiritual healing, energy healing, Ayurveda, homeopathy, conventional I mean, you've got so many different modalities of healing, chiropractors and acupuncturists, and the list is endless, right? So, I mean, it's an incredibly diverse medical industry in India, unlike the UK and America and Europe and more developed countries that has more of a monopoly from the conventional medicine system. So, I mean, in India, the acceptance of these medical discoveries are miles ahead of the West, right? So, I mean, what to do? Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say.
You have a lot of medical professionals outside of India that come and attend these events?
There are many medical practitioners that are practicing this modality. It's challenging. It depends what modality they're in, right? I mean, if you're a chiropractor or something like that, then you can practice these modalities without a problem. If you're a medical doctor, then you'll risk losing your license if you follow these modalities. In the same way, Dr. Hum's license was taken away. I mean, his license was taken away because he refused to prescribe chemotherapy. So it depends entirely the modality. If you're in a naturopath space, then you have much more freedom to be able to learn and follow these modalities. In conventional medicine, it's impossible, right? I mean, we've just seen a whole bunch of medical doctors who've lost their licenses because they didn't toe the line on with issues on the pandemic, right? I mean, so if in the conventional medicine system, if you don't do what you're told, then you're out, right? So unfortunately, it's impossible for conventional medicine doctors to be able to learn these modalities in America or in the West, at least. Probably no, globally, actually, I think you'd have the same problems here.
What is some of I know because we've talked about a few things that you've experienced and that you have shared studies on. What are some other items, some other ailments that people have gone through that they search out this information for?
Well, for me, the vast majority of people, I mean, let's look at it in the light of day, Marianne. I mean, I'm a venture capital investor who spent the last now 18 years studying cancer and healing terminally ill cancer patients for a hobby, right? So if you get a cancer diagnosis, are you going to go to the world's leading oncologist at Johns Hopkins, or are you going to go to some random venture capital investor who heals terminally ill cancer patients for a hobby? So I understand the platform that I sit on, but people only come to me I'm a last resort form of treatment to help people who have no other options. And I'm not a practitioner, right? I don't charge people for helping them with cancer. I charge in what I call karma. So when people come to me, they don't pay me. However, my colleagues who do practice in this, I mean, the people who are open-minded enough to be able to look at and understand this modality, for the most part, they will go to them for every problem. You know, if their nose starts running, then they'll want to understand what causes a sinus infection and how do you switch it off, right? If you've got, I don't know, you've got IBS, you've got a bad back, you've got cervical neck pain, you've got any problem. Yeah, I mean, many and most of these problems can literally be switched off like a light switch, right? So the people in my community that consult on this on a full-time basis, I mean, they deal with every type of issue, right? I mean, this medical doctor unraveled the biological code. So, I mean, he even unraveled things like Down syndrome and autism, suicide. I mean, he even unraveled the biological purpose of suicide. I mean, can you imagine? So what my teacher discovered is that suicide is what he called suicide constellation. So suicide constellation basically gets triggered when you have what he described as a double territorial loss conflict. Now, I'll convert that into English. Double territorial loss conflict basically means I've lost two types of territory, which means I got fired from my job and my wife left me, as examples. Okay. Now, when I solve one of those problems, my wife left me and I get myself a new girlfriend. When we lose two forms of territory. Now, if you look at the easiest way to understand this is to look at pack animals in nature, a wolf pack, elephants, stags, any of those. Any pack animal in nature, you have an alpha that runs the pack. And basically the alpha is periodically challenged by one of the betas in the pack for the alpha position. Now that is a fight to the death. Okay, so in nature, if you lose your territory, if you lose one territory, then typically you're dead. Now, for us, nature has decided that if we lose two lots of territory, then basically it means that nature has concluded that our genes are weak. Okay, so the biological purpose of suicide constellation is to increase the strength of the gene pool. Okay, now, when you solve one of those problems, my wife left me and I got a new girlfriend, or I got fired from my job and I get another job. Nature has concluded that you are weak, and in order to increase the strength of the gene pool, you are put into what is called suicide constellation. Okay, now, I've been in suicide constellation. And basically what happens is the desire to kill yourself is overwhelming. It is almost impossible to not kill yourself once you go into suicide constellation. Now, if you kill yourself, the purpose, the biological purpose has been fulfilled because weak genes have been taken out of the gene pool. On the other hand, if you manage to survive the suicide constellation, which is incredibly difficult, nature concludes that you're strong because you managed to survive in an almost impossible situation. So if you manage to survive the impossible desire to commit suicide, then basically nature has concluded that your genes are strong, and biological purpose of increasing the strength of the gene pool has again been fulfilled, because you stay in the gene pool because you managed to survive an almost impossible situation. Now, here's the trick. You can switch that suicide constellation off like a light switch. If you say to yourself, right, okay, I know that I have had a double territorial loss conflict. My wife left me and I lost my job. So nature has concluded that my genes are weak. And I've now solved one of those problems by getting a new job or a new girlfriend. And I'm now in suicide constellation. Please switch off the suicide constellation. I'm not going to kill myself. My genes are strong. And when you say that to your subconscious mind, basically you will switch off the suicide constellation like a light switch. It's extraordinary.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I had tried the one in regards to back pain, and it was just phenomenal, and how that really made a shift.
Oh, back pain. Oh my God, Marianne, I've had chronic back problems for the last 15 years, where I've spent, large parts of my life laying on my bedroom floor because I couldn't get to the bathroom. I mean, different areas of the back, the lower back or the thoracic spine or the cervical spine are affected by different issues. But once you understand the biological purpose of the specific area of the back that has been affected. I've had back pain numerous times. If I wake up in the morning with back pain, say my lower back is caused by what's called a central self-worth conflict, something that's core to my life or to my values, and the pain starts within 24 hours of you solving that problem, right? Basically, when you're in conflict, the disc will basically ulcerate. And when you solve that problem, it will become inflamed and start healing and become painful in the same way as when you cut your finger. But if you can connect to cause that life problem to the back pain, say, right, okay, I know I've got back pain because I solved the problem yesterday that my business has just got derailed, or whatever the central life issue that you solved yesterday. As soon as you consciously connect that to your lower back pain, then you will, if you can catch that within the first 15 to 30 minutes of experiencing the pain, then it will switch the pain off within 15 minutes. The longer you leave it, the more the inflammation builds, and the longer it will take for the inflammation to come down and the pain to completely disappear. But even if you've had it for 24 hours or 48 hours, as soon as you connect the cause of the problem with the symptoms of the problem, it will downgrade that 10 on 10 pain to 4 on 10 immediately. And then basically the pain, the healing, it triggers a cathartic healing process, and that pain will be gone within a day or less, maybe. It's quite extraordinary. It saved me so many times from, I mean, I've spent weeks and months on my bedroom floor, Marianne, and it's been, I mean, for me, the most difficult part of having a consistent reoccurring problem is that if you don't know the cause of the problem, then you can never address the issue in your life to stop it from happening again. And for me, it was always so frustrating that I didn't know what caused the problems. And when I learned it, it's just transformed my life.
I can easily see why it is such a game changer. Also, congratulations on your book, Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis, becoming an Amazon #1 bestseller. I know it's getting such great reviews. Where can our listeners connect with you? I understand you have some great resources on your website as well.
I do, yeah. So my home base is danny-carroll.com, and that's with Carroll is Carroll. Well, my dad's Irish, so that's the Irish spelling. On my website, I put a resource page that will help people to navigate around the community. So you can go there, and it's a single source that will help you to find your way around various different practitioners' websites. So that's my home base. You can find me there, and that has this book. And this book is the start of a 500 plus book series. I'm writing one book on every disease, and those books will be up on my website on a tab called The Healing Tribune.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Absolute pleasure, Marianne. I really appreciate you hosting me.
Well, thank you, Danny. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis. Discover a palliative care alternative medicine that you can survive. Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis by Danny Carroll has just been awarded the #1 Amazon International bestseller. Make sure to drop by Amazon and purchase your copy today. Make sure to visit Danny's website at danny-carroll.com for more information and to be part of his community. If you're struggling with feelings of suicide, make sure to visit the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. In the U.S., that number is 988. Please note, this interview is not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, counseling, or professional services of any kind. This program is not meant to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, and individuals with health problems should always consult their healthcare provider. This show holds no responsibility for the validity or accuracy of the information shared on the show, and is for informational purposes only. On that note, we are going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after this message.
The book Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis, authored by Danny Carroll, is on sale at Amazon now. Licensed psychologist and psychotherapist Tessa Antia-John-Guerra commented, "This is one of the most empowering books on the topic of cancer you will ever read." Award-winning author T.L. Needham commented, "This recommended book can be understood by anyone seeking answers, hope, and alternatives to a terminal diagnosis. Buy it now on Amazon.com.
Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.